My name is Connie Williams. I am a mortgage loan officer for Texas Farm Credit, and we want to welcome you to our builder seminar. I am surrounded with just absolutely industry experts. We're going to cover everything from buying raw land to deciding what kind of home you want to build, what size, what the cost is, and roll into how to get your dream home financed. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, and we will get the ball rolling. So Jeff, do you want to start?
Yeah, hi, my name is Jeff Millikin. I'm with Texas Farm Credit. I'm a loan officer here. Been in the mortgage business for about 17 years, and really excited about our rural home loan programs. We do everything from lots to construction loans and everything in between. So we definitely specialize in the rural lifestyle.
Exciting. How about you, Cody? You want to go next?
Yes, my name is Cody Wallace. I'm with CW Custom Builders. We've been in business for about 3 to 4 years now. We are focusing on high-quality custom homes for an affordable price and paying attention to the details and giving the customers what they want.
How about you, Karen?
I'm Karen Gulick, broker for South Texas Realty. We've been around the area, Wilson, Carnes primarily, but we also service Guadalupe, Bear, Comal, Kendall, and pretty much anything in between here on the coast. So we'd love to help you with anything, and we go anywhere from lots to residential to home building, working with somebody with great builders and lenders such as yourself to put packages together, and then also large packages. We have a team of 10 agents and myself, and we can help you anywhere you need to in Texas.
All right, and last but not least, how about you, Matt?
Hi, my name is Matt Slaughter. I'm with MW Slaughter Construction Management Services. Build in the Comal County area, Guadalupe County, Hayes County, Wilson County. We build custom home barnuminiums and try to get a quality product for the within the client's budgets.
So our first question, I kind of want everybody to answer. So what do you think is the biggest misconception when you're buying property and you're building?
I think for me, if you don't mind me starting, when it starts that they build, they buy a lot, and we look at it, I think the buyer is there's so many options. They don't know what's the next step. So I think they need somebody to help them, such as the builder, to say, okay, this is what we need to do next. The lender is very important because all the money and all the money comes, everything to achieve this goal comes from the lender. So if somebody understands that the first draw goes to the lot, and I try to help them with the paperwork, but if everybody does it together, I think that solves the problem of confusion as to what to do next. Or else they're spinning their wheels on a stationary bike, and they can achieve it, yet they don't believe that they can because they need the right team together, such as all of us on here together. So
Probably the biggest misconception I would see would be the pricing of the home and the land together. For instance, a lot of customers come to me and they're like, well, hey, can you build a house for $125, $135, $145 a square foot? A lot of customers look at it over the living square footage when they don't take into consideration for 3, 4, 5 car garage, 30 by 40 back patio, big front porch. There's just so many factors that will draw up the cost per square foot living. So they go in and they're looking at a piece of land. Well, I like this land. I want this land. It's nice. Then they come to me and they get a price and they're like, well, that's way out of our budget. Instead of getting with their broker, their lender, and with the builder all at the same time, so they have a better idea of what they can afford.
A lot of times I see what I call sticker shock, where they go out and they buy some land and they haven't consulted, and they don't know to reach out to their team. And the other things that I'm going to add on to Cody is like the cost of the utilities and the septic systems and the water wells and the fencing. and the land clearing, and just all the equipment necessary to maintain the property. Once they purchase the land and build on it, and if they would get with the team and come together with their builder, lender, broker, we can put together a total package for them to where they know what they're going into and they see all the costs from the beginning, and they've got a better idea before they purchase the land.
So kind of what I'm hearing between like Cody and Matt, y'all would like to be consulted maybe even before the purchase of the land, right? To go ahead and have that conversation about what your budget's going to look like. So when they go to talk to a real estate professional like Karen, they have a little bit more of an educated guess and they're not stuck up a creek without a paddle kind of deal, right?
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay, very cool. How about you, Jeff, from like a financing perspective, what do you think is a huge misconception that people have?
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize that they can finance these properties like they can. I think people a lot of times think they have to go to a small bank, which is, and do a short-term loan. They don't realize they can do longer-term construction, permanent financing on these properties. So I think people are kind of scared of the rural properties until they come and talk to us, and then they kind of realize that they can actually afford this like a regular house, right? It's not much different than buying in town. So I think that scares people. I think that people have that big misconception that there's no options for financing for Barnuminiums, especially. People are really scared of the financing on that, where in our world, it's the exact same as a house. So I think that's something we see a lot of, but getting involved early is always great, right? So I know we try to ask them about building costs and if they talk to a builder, have plans, and if not, do it as soon as you can, because that's, you got to get real numbers before you can be secure.
Absolutely. And kind of to build on that with Jeff, is it's not just the cost of the building, right? It's the cost of everything it's going to take to maintain. It's going to take a little bit of liquidity up front to get built sometimes. And so that's just something that expectation we want to get set going forward before someone's talking to a Karen or one of the builders, to make sure that, again, it's something that's realistic to them, so they don't have their heart set here and then feel like they get knocked back to here. So let's start with you, Karen. What are some important aspects you think customers should look for when they're looking for some property to build on?
I think they need to look at, just to try to help the builders in the case, to keep those realistic expectations. Maybe the slope of the land, if it's sandy versus rock, you're going to have a conventional versus if it's septic, you have to have a conventional versus a aerobic, just based on the clay or whatever is in there. I think that adds to the cost. So I always try to help them. If I know their overall budget, not that I'm a builder expert, but I have seen where it can cause some issues depending on the slope of the land or what you have to deal with as far as your building site. So I always try to approach it from that standpoint. And I think knowledge is power. And again, I really stress getting the whole package of what their end goal is versus, because if you just go step by step by step and you don't know what their end goal is or their end amount that they would like to be in, because they haven't talked to a lender yet or a builder, I think it's hard to really get them, for us to start looking. So I really try to approach it that way. That way I can kind of, instead, otherwise if you just, let's go look at this, and it's never, you're going to set yourself up for failure because we don't know what the end goal is. So that's probably some of the important things that I look for when we start our search.
So on that note, builders, kind of walk me through, what do y'all think makes a really good home site when you're wanting to build a property?
I guess the first thing I look at is, like Karen was saying, was the slope of the land, the soil type, where utilities are at, how far we got to get to utilities, where the placement of the home they want it to be at. All of that's going to play a factor into it. Depending on what kind of road they want, because concrete obviously is not cheap. You can have 18 inches on one side of the house, and due to elevation, you're 6 foot out of the ground on the other side of the house, which is jump through the air.
I like to kind of talk to them and ask them what their master plan is on their property. some folks buy 5 acres and some folks buy hundreds of acres. And sometimes the house is not the entire focal point of what they want to do with the land. Do they want to build, barns, or, what are they going to do with the property? And so you start talking to them about master plan, and then we look at maybe how to lay out the master plan, and it may change the location of the home site. Maybe that's not the best spot to build the house, and according to what their final use of the property is going to be. And like you said, one of the biggest problems I see is, a lot of folks want to build real far back, which that's a great idea, but we have to take into consideration how much the utilities are going to cost to get them there. Like, is there water available at the road? If not, in rural property, we drill a lot of water wells, and then you have to look into the quality of water and the filtration systems that go along with it. And septic systems, I think we've all touched on that a little bit. And then the cost of the power, getting the power companies to there. Most of them will have up to like a 500-foot minimum or maximum that they're willing to run for the price of the initial account setup. And then beyond that is a certain dollar per foot past that, which can really add up if you're building thousands of feet off the road. So I like to figure out what their master plan is, and then kind of consult them on, what the best way is to go about building when we select a site.
So Jeff, kind of walk us through the lending side. What is a pre-qualification? What do people need to expect when they're coming to approach like you and I about getting pre-qualified for a loan to build their dream home?
Pre-qualification is us looking at initial numbers and making sure that they're going to qualify in the future, for their permanent loan or even their construction loan or both. So it's really, really important because it's really what gives you that security and that I guess it's pre-qualification, right? To go and look. We like to do really thorough pre-qualifications where look at documents and make sure we're using the right numbers versus just going off stated stuff. And having your master plan is really important in that, because there's a lot of different loan types out there for different properties. So if you are looking at something that's going to be really agricultural versus something that's going to be just a weekend house on a few acres, it could be a different loan program. So it's really important to know and to get to the bottom of what you're wanting to do in the long run. So that's part of our pre-qualification process too, is finding their end goal, and what they want out of this property long term, because that could determine the length of the loan or the type of loan. So a pre-qualification, the sooner you do that, the better. It doesn't necessarily have to be first, but it should be before you're starting to put pen to paper on contracts. You should at least have the pre-qualification first.
Absolutely. And to kind of build on that, some of those docs that you need to be ready to provide are going to be like your tax returns, right? You're going to need to be able to show that you have liquidity and that you have the money to be able to have that down payment that's going to be required, kind of regardless on whatever kind of property you build on. Other things that we're going to do is we're going to look at your credit score, right? So there's different pricing advantages and different products that we can offer based on your credit score. Usually, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, we're probably shooting for a minimum of 680 on most of these products that we're going to be talking about today. But yeah, so we try to get all that information up front. We look at your debt to income, which is basically what you make versus what you owe. We look at, how much debt and things that you already have on your books, because we as lenders are not in the position and in the business of putting someone where they're potentially going to have a problem. And so that's something that's really important to us. And that's why we have these riggers up front, is because the last thing we want you to do is to go have everything lined up and then realize you either can't afford it or that there's another roadblock that would get through. Okay?
Right. And the sooner we look at that, the sooner we'll know if there's a glitch on the credit, we can work with the people to get that credit score up, right? A lot of times it's pretty simple to get a score up 20 points, which could make or break a pre-qualification or pre-approval.
Absolutely. So Matt, I have a question. Everybody's dream right now is to buy 10 acres and a barnuminium. So can you walk me through what is a barnuminium, what's a metal home, and kind of maybe some advantages and disadvantages when you're comparing metal to like a traditional stick-built home?
Sure, Connie. I guess my definition of a barndominium is a house built inside a metal building with some sort of a percentage of shop space, garage space, or an open area that may be a multifunctional type space based on the client's use. They typically are more modular. A barndominium is a modular size due to the metal building common shapes and sizes, and so they look more like metal buildings. We can dress them up with wainscot and rock wainscot on the outside and different types of porches and things that you see in more typical residence. The inside is no different than a residence. The finish out's the same, the materials are the same, everything. Once you open the door, they tend to look like a traditional stick-built type house. I would say a metal home would be more of a traditional type house with metal components in it. Maybe you take a conventional house and put instead of using wood and siding and shingles, you use metal studs and a metal siding type thing and kind of make it look more like a barn. I believe that's what a metal home would be classified as. And I think the major difference is they wouldn't have any type of, there wouldn't be any shop space or garage. That would basically define the difference between a metal home and a barndominium. Traditional homes, in my opinion, require a little bit of higher maintenance. With the painting on the outside and the stucco, it's all going to require a maintenance type thing in the future. Barndominiums and metal homes, most of the materials like the sheet metal in the roofing and the siding have manufactured applied coatings. So I think that's one of the big differences.
Karen, I want you to walk me through, what is an ag exemption that people always talk about? What are deed restrictions? Why is this important when people are really starting to shop for maybe a little bit more acreage, right? Maybe like that 10-ish or more. When do those come into play?
I think it's imperative to look at, especially if they have a whole buying a piece of property, working with a construction loan, working with the builder for the final product, because now whatever they envision as their plan, again, we have to look at their end goal, because there could be setback lines, there could be restrictions against square footage, there could be restrictions to where they cannot build that barndominium, but yet that's what their dream was, and they have to have a site-built traditional home. So I think the restrictions are, again, one of the top first to look at, along with those setback lines, because they could have this massive house that's not going to fit in any of this. There could be a gas line running through the part that they thought they were going to build on the perfect hill. So I think looking at even down to finding out what type of easements are on the property that you, as an agent, you need to really look into. You're always trying to look for something that would prohibit the end goal. So again, we're trying to achieve that end goal, and that pipeline going straight through the middle of a property where that was the perfect site it's a done deal. I mean, all this other is not, we're not going to get to achieve that goal because of that. So I think deed restrictions, looking at and then going to the ag exemption, I think it's something that they need to look at first. If there's no ag exemption, if they're wanting to plan to have that tax break and work with that land, if there's no tax exemption or ag exemption on in play as it is, now they have to wait X amount of years per different counties or different rules just to make sure that they have receipts, they're having production, and then now they can apply. If it's already in place, then of course we want to make sure to apply instantly after they close, just to make sure that that's a huge loss. And so I usually try to help them even after purchase, the beginning of the next year, January, okay, let's file your homestead exemption, let's file your ag exemption to make sure that you have everything in place. So I think both of those are imperative for the end goal and future living on the property.
Absolutely. And just you know, you said every county is a little bit different, but just for people that are brand new in this process, if you have a property that's not ag exempt, or what they actually call as an ag valuation, you're looking at potentially 5 years to get that done. And so that, you know, that's quite a burden of proof on you as a new homeowner. And the last thing that you want is to have to manage all of this on top of everything else that's going to be going on with the build. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So Cody, I've never built a home. I think most of the people here were watching, has obviously probably never built a home. So walk me through, what is the building process? What do I need to expect? Everything from sitting down and talking to you until I get the keys to my new home.
So the way we do it is, I love to meet the customers at their property. If they don't have property, we'll go look at property with them. I have an in-house architect. She draws. She's an interior designer. All of that's in-house. You'll meet with me, her. We draw up your plans. Once you select your property, we look for a good place to build your home. From there, we get with the mortgage companies. Then we start the draw process. Through the construction phases of it, you know, your foundation, your framing, while the beginning stages of it, you know, the customers are meeting with the interior designer. They're selecting all their colors, their brick, their stone, so forth and so on, from plumbing, beams, light fixtures, everything. And we have numerous walkthroughs with the customers, from framing, electrical, plumbing, just to make sure everything's where the customer wants it before we actually, you know, put insulation and go into a sheetrock and drywall. For the flooring aspects, I mean, customers are selecting flooring. It's a fairly smooth process that I use. I do a lot of one-on-one with the clients. I'm the owner operator, so I'm one-on-one with the customers, not just, you know, a project manager. I mean, you're actually talking to the owner. But I will remind all customers that it is a custom home. It's not a home that I've built, you know, 500 times or 3 times or whatever. Every home is individually separate than any other home. So there will be issues. There will be, you know, stuff that will need to be fixed, and it's just part of the building process. But I can promise you, it'll be taken care of. That's the biggest thing from getting a true custom home compared to, you know, a track home. So at the final, we have numerous walkthroughs through our the whole build process, and then during the final walkthrough, during touch-ups, you know, cabinetry, all of that, we go ahead and then we're completed.
So Matt, what is a good timeline for someone when they're building? Like what kind of expectation do you set for clients?
The timeline, I'd say with my process, I'm gonna add on to Cody. When they come to me, I usually tell them it's about a year from the design. If they come to me with no plans, you know, they have a dream of what they want to build. Some of them might have land, some of them might not have land. That initial first 2 to 3 months is designing with some architect, and then, you know, leading to the pre-qualification with the lender, and getting with the basically going through the plan revisions, starting the pricing process, engaging a structural engineer, and engaging septic design. And the first 2 to 3 months wraps up all of the above, basically design features. And then once we actually close on the loan, or the construction loan, or with the lender, it's usually 7 to 10 months past that. So you're looking at, you know, the upward end of a year minimum from start to finish on design to turnkey move in.
So Jeff, I kind of want to come back to you. I know Cody and Matt have both said something about like draws. So can you kind of explain what a draw is and why that's important in the building process?
Yeah, definitely. First, I'd like to say, as someone who just built my first, custom home, first home I've ever built, but it is kind of scary because you see something wrong. My wife really had a hard time with it. Like you see something wrong and you flip out, right? It's like, no, that's not supposed to be a corner there, but it's an easy fix. Those guys are pros, and they it always got fixed pretty quick. But it was a hard pill to swallow at first when you see something, not the way you dreamed of it, but they can fix it, and that's just part of the process. But back to the draws. So during construction, there's different costs, right? So the builder will take draws for each step of the house, like to pour the slab. Generally, the first draw, let's start with that, is usually paying off your land loan if you have that. So once we close on our construction loan, if you currently have a land loan, that construction loan is going to pay that off with the first draw. And so you will only be paying interest on what's been drawn. So you're actually interest you pay on that loan is grows as the loan goes on because the loan size gets bigger with each draw. So we have an automated draw system that's really great that I think builders are really going to like. So as it's drawn out, and it eventually gets to where it's fully drawn out, and that's where it would convert into a permanent loan on a one-time close. Then on a two-time close, you'd max out that construction loan, and then we'd refinance that into that permanent financing.
So I kind of want to build on this one-time to two-time close kind of deal. So we have there's traditionally kind of two different products that you can have when you're building. One is a two-time close, which is often, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but it's an interest-only loan for the first year. And then at the end of that year or the end of your build session, you roll into a traditional 15, 20, 25, or 30-year note, depending on the product that you kind of selected. A one-time close, which is usually the more advantageous option if you are looking to save closing costs and things like that, is like something that we offer here at TFC, where basically you close on your construction loan, and then as soon as your construction's done, it rolls into that permanent note, and so you're not going through another set of title work, closing costs, appraisals, things like that. It's all kind of done in the front end, and the appraisal is usually done, in the very beginning as how it's going to be complete, correct? And then we kind of roll from there. So it's just two different products, two different processes. It's a matter of what's going to be the best fit for you. That's an advantage of working like myself and Jeff at TFC, is that we're going to sit down and kind of run through the scenarios. And if our one-time close isn't the best fit, we're going to find something that's a better fit for you, and then know that we're going to get that permanent note at the very end because we're going to be able to help you out. So that's one thing. Just make sure we're trying to arm you with the questions to come and ask all of us industry professionals. Okay.
What's the criteria for figuring out what the best fit is for a one-time close or a two-time close? What do you ask them? What are you looking for?
Determining factor on which of these loans, the one-time close, the two-time close, or even a three-time close, just depends on your timing, right? I mean, if you're wanting to go out and buy some land now, but don't have any idea what you want to build, you're going to end up with a three-time close potentially, right? Because you're going to buy the land, you could build the house, and then you could have a permanent loan. If you're ready to build and you've talked to a builder, you're ready to roll, we can do a one-time close where you buy the land, build the house, and roll into the permanent in the same loan. So really it's about timing. If you're ready to build, the one-time close is nice because you can roll all three of those in there, because those three loans could be three surveys, or three appraisals, and that can be time consuming and expensive. So really it's timing, I think, is what determines which loan process you would go through.
Very good. Thank you.
And just to kind of build on that too, is sometimes it determines how they're going to live in that interim period, right? So some availability of like doing some kind of like a bridge loan while they're building and then going to move, or if they're going to sell their house and live in an RV, if they're going to live with in-laws or parents, which God bless you, like just kind of a matter of how you're going to handle it is something that we're going to look at as well, because we go back to that debt to income or DTI. we have certain levels that we have to keep that under. And so that might be something that we coach you through too. It's like, hey, have you thought about potentially selling your home and renting or utilizing other resources that you have in the interim while you build? I want you to walk me through something, Karen. Why are finding comps in the area important when you are looking at potentially buying property and what to build in that area?
It's a very good question. I just came up with this the other day. There's somewhat of a construction remodel loan. Somebody wants to look at this one property, but you don't want to overbuild. Let's say you buy this fixer-upper. There's a construction loan for a remodel. That plus the purchase price of the actual initial property put together, you don't want, within the comps, you don't want to be 50,000 over, because what happens now, your appraisal's ordered through your lending, and then you want to make sure that you have some either price per square foot, per acre, whatever is measured, because every different property is going to be measured in a different value and put together in a compilation of all those arenas of thought. But you don't want to be overbuilt to where now, if there's a comparable sale for the final takeout for the final loan, you're well over, and now the buyers are going to have to bring more money to the table because it's their loan to value is skewed. So I think, even again, I keep going back to knowing their big picture end goal. I also want to see with the builder's construction loan, I just really would like to glance. I'm not the expert on that by no means because I'm not an appraiser, but I would like to glance to see if we have something to base the appraiser's values on. And if it's a little far out, I may just give them the information and maybe come back to you as lenders and say, this is kind of where we're at. What do you think we should do? And then if that doesn't fit within there, I may say, maybe there's some things you can tweak within finish out with a builder, maybe converse with him. So again, it's a team project the whole way through. Absolutely. So the comps are very important I don't want them to come back 3 years down the road. I always look at it as if they need to sell it for a job change or life change, if we're overbuilt, we're going to have issues from that point. And I don't want them to be disappointed. You always want to, whatever your investment, you want to be able to cash out if you do choose.
Exactly. Jeff, kind of build on that. What are some issues if someone is overbuilt, both from a refinancing standpoint or selling and financing standpoint?
Well, all the financing is based off of loan to value, right? On every loan we've ever done, and probably everyone will ever do, there is a loan to value. Yeah, there's a loan to value that's important on there. So if you're financing, it's gonna max out, and not all construction add-ons or upgrades, equal value, right? I mean, they may be something you really like in the house, and it may be really expensive, but it may not mean your appraised value goes up. So if you can overbuild, and then you could price yourself out of the loan even. So if you're paying cash for it, you could still be the most expensive property around and have trouble selling it. But as far as the loan goes, we're gonna have to consider that loan to value, and not all upgrades are value added for us.
All right, Matt. So I have a question for you. When someone is interviewing a builder, right, deciding, hey, how do I decide who I want to build my dream home? What are some important questions that people should ask to figure out if they're going to vibe and if it's going to be a good experience and all the things?
Yes, Connie. Some important questions I think are important. Ask them what their process is and what services are included within their processes. I have an in-house architect that works for me, and I use a structural engineer, and I kind of offer a turnkey service from all the way to design. And I initiate an interview with the lenders and try to get them pre-approved as we're building preliminary budgets at the same time that we're building working with the architects, and we're getting them pre-qualified and making sure that they can afford what their dream is from the beginning. So I think it's important to understand what the full process is and what your builder can offer you. As opposed to some builders may say, bring me a plan, I'll give you a price, and then we'll build your project. So I think that's important is understand what they can offer for you as a client. I think it's important to ask if your builder carries general liability insurance, and ask them if their subcontractors carry general liability insurance. So as a client, it's a comforting fact that you know that your builder is insured, and everyone that steps foot on the job is insured. Additional to general liability, I think it's important to understand if you know your builder is going to require builders or have a builder's risk policy on your project before construction begins. And I know most lenders, if not all lenders, will require this. So it's important to know that your builder is familiar with the builder's risk insurance and the general liability insurance. Another question to ask is, do they offer financing? I don't necessarily offer financing personally, but I work with lenders and that I can get you set up, and start the process of being pre-qualified for the financing side of it. I also think it's important to ask the builder how many projects he currently has going on, if there's any that you can, physically step foot into and look and see for yourself. And I deal with the clients directly, and I know I won't take on any more projects than I can personally manage myself. So I think it's important to know that, a builder doesn't have 15 or 20 projects and he's all by himself and he can't manage your project coming up. And I think that's where quality can come down. So I think those are some key points to ask the builder when the clients are interviewing.
Okay. So Cody, I have a question for you. What is an overage? It's all a word that we've heard in whether you're the lending world or in the building world. And how do you as a builder handle overages?
I mean, there's going to be upgrades. I started looking at Pinterest, started looking at different ideas from friends and families, and Cody, can we do this? Can we do that? And I mean, we can do everything. But like I'm very honest with a lot of my customers. Usually if it looks pretty, it's got a pretty price tag to it. That's just the nature of the beast. But what I usually do is, like on the overages, is I will, if it's within reason, I will float the overages myself so they don't have to pay their interest to the bank for that. Then at the end, if they're paying cash, they're going to pay me cash, or they're going to roll it into their mortgage through like yourselves. That's totally up to the customer, and obviously it all depends on the dollar amount.
Jeff, from a bank side, how do we handle overages in the lending industry, and what are some problems that may occur with those?
Well, generally we approve someone and close someone at a dollar amount, right? So, their loan is going to be for that set dollar amount. So generally overages come out of pocket, and people that are building, usually have a set down payment they're going to put. It is possible to go back and look at overages, but it is a process. It's not automatically in there. So there can be some cost involved in doing that. But overages are generally, from what I've seen in our construction loans, people come out of pocket for them in the end. It may not be right at the time. I know when I built, we generally paid for them when we did them, right? So if we wanted something special, we would, but I think that's builder specific, but that's overages on a loan can be a problem if they think they're going to finance them and don't ask. So if you do have overages or want to do something special, talk to your lender about it as well, as everyone else. So it never hurts to bring stuff up and just be open during the process to us as well, so we know what's going on.
Okay. So
yeah, I'd like to add to that.
Go for it. Yeah, absolutely, Matt.
I'm going to second on him. That's how I handle overage as well. I kind of, as soon as somebody tells me I let them know they're going over budget on selections, and we get a dollar amount set to that overage, and then we take care of it before we move forward or purchase materials, and I let them know exactly how much it is. So I think open communication is a big key factor to when it comes to overages, and not letting them stack up all the way to the end and then hit the client with a $20,000 bill saying, you've made all these extra selections, I've got it in your house, it's installed already, and it just kind of causes animosity at the end. So I think that's a big, if you can take care of the overages at the time that they're happening and fund them out of pocket, just like what Jeff said, fund them out of pocket. And if you keep the lender out, it tends to, not saying keep the lender out of the overages, but sometimes it really gets confusing and causes a whole lot more problems when they have to go back and refinance things and reevaluate and reappraise based on something that may be a $5,000 upgrade out of pocket. So I think that's the best way to handle that.
My husband's solution would be to take my phone away and to not let me have Pinterest. But I don't know if anybody else like that would be the solution for anyone else.
Yeah, Pinterest is a killer.
Yeah.
This is
Be
what
prepared
I
to spend
want.
more on your appliances, right? Appliances
Yeah.
are going to be more than you
I always ask
budgeted
them
for.
if there
No
was a
doubt.
price tag. I always ask them if there's a price tag on that Pinterest picture they got.
They need to add that. They need to add that.
All right, Karen, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you have a customer that does not have a builder lined up, right? Like they say like, hey, I'm ready to basically pull the trigger, but I don't have my plans yet. Are you going to go under contract with them on a piece of property and hope for a 60, 90-day close? Are you going to tell them, we're going to get this bought as a land loan and you're going to sit on it for a little bit and then we're going to convert it into a construction loan later on?
Before I give them that specific of advice, there's usually a day or so that while we're writing up the contract, looking at numbers, looking at comparable sales, doing our due diligence on the property, such as floodplain and pipeline easements and so forth, I'll have them, or I'll get on the phone with a lender to say, hey, is this something that we can look at a one-time close? Should we just do the purchase of the land? Is there what should we do? Even on pretty much any contract, I always like to consult whoever their lender is, just because they may want a different type loan. Like, let's look at this other type loan. So I truly don't put it in my own hands. I still have them consult the lender first. Since they haven't talked to a builder yet, that means to me that most likely it's going to be a land purchase only, and then they're going to work on it from then and do another process. I pretty much start writing it up as that, but I always wait to see what the lender has to say, because there's so much more time now. They got to consult the builder. The builder doesn't have the moment to just say, oh yeah, I'll meet you at 2:00, after an hour. There's things that need to be addressed. Plus he or she can't give an estimate on what the costs are. So to me, it's going to be too complicated to do a one-time. So I don't just assume, and I don't want to put the buyer in that position of losing their dream property because we couldn't get all the items together, and then the seller doesn't want to wait that long. So, and also on that note too, the seller's agent or the seller may not be approving of a 60-day close. So if that's going to mean, I try to look into that too, because if the end goal is that is their dream property, we don't want to lose it based on, we just have all this homework to do and it's not fair to the seller to do that. So I look at both of those elements, so I don't just put it under contract for 60 to 90 and hope for the best. So I think, again, knowledge is power. Consulting with the experts, builder and lender is key, again, on this. So I think the takeaway from all of our conversations is consult as a team, all three units, just to facilitate getting it done.
Absolutely. Just because I know that there may be some people that don't know all of our terms, what's an easement?
An easement would be anyone that has ingress and egress, so they can come on the property, go off the property at will based on a deed that is put down in the courthouse saying that they have the permission to do that. A utility company has an easement to go along usually the outskirts of the border. A pipeline easement that's already filed in the courthouse will have designated feet away from the direction of that pipeline, and also directions away from that pipeline, sometimes 50 feet, sometimes 25 feet, depending on the size of the pipeline. And also electrical easement. There could be a transformer line that'll go through, and that's usually going to gobble up some of the use of that land because they can't build within within that area. So I think it's critical to do due diligence. The agent needs to do due diligence for the potential purchases to make sure that could rule out everything, and you just need to move on to the next one now.
Absolutely. Jeff, I have a question for you. How are taxes figured out on new construction?
Well, they're a little complicated. Depends on the land, right? So if the land has a current ag exemption, we're going to give the land the credit for the ag exemption. Generally, and it depends on the county or how you split it up with the construction, minus the maybe 1 acre and the new house, right? Which is going to be taxed at the tax rate. So, if you have, I'll just use mine for example, right? I bought 16 acres here in Washington County and just built a house. So all 16 acres were ag exempt, and then the new assessment just came out, and it's the house in 1 acre and then 15 acres ag exempt. So you still get the tax break on the land and the ag exemption on the land, but you are going to be taxed at the full rate on the assessed value of the house. You don't. That's a number that the county comes up with, but it's going to go up. It's going to be a pretty good number depending on the house you build. So that's how we figure that out, and that's generally how it's figured out on most properties.
Gotcha. Matt, I have a question. I think we kind of talked a little bit in overages, but what do you think is a customer's biggest mistake in the building process?
Is having realistic budgets that suit their needs and stick with them. I think from the beginning, everybody wants to have the icing on the cake, and they come up with the Pinterest and they show you all these pictures, and they don't really understand what the price tags that come with those type of upgrades. And having realistic budgets, and maybe they can afford the high end fixtures and the high end all the stuff that we as builders put into these houses. But if we have their realistic budgets that suit their needs, and then to stick with them, making selections within their budgets on a timely manner is also a big one. I've seen projects get delayed by clients that simply can't make up their minds, and it's not a bad thing, but they have to understand that when I try to get all the selections, I try to prompt them, plenty of time ahead of time before I actually need to order them and get them on site. And making their selections on a timely manner can eliminate delay on the schedule. And a lot of times they select things that aren't available, especially in the time in the world we're living in right now. The availability of materials and lead times can also cause that delay. So if you wait to the last minute to tell a builder exactly what you want, you have to understand there might be 8, 10, 12 weeks out before we can actually get our hands on that stuff. So I think those are some of the biggest mistakes they make as clients and owners through the building process.
Cody, I guess I have a question, and you may do a range, and it may be, it's going to be different from everybody, but what is a realistic expectation in terms of budget per square foot? Just give me a range so people know oh, that's doable, or maybe I need to scale back a little bit and reevaluate building.
So I would probably say small front porch, regular 2-car garage, 700, 800 square feet, and probably a 300 to 400 square foot back porch. You should be anywhere between 135 and up, depending on selections. Selections has a lot to do with everything. You want $1.50 tile, you want $2 tile, you want $8 square foot tile.
Mm-hmm.
So that has, you want beams, what kind of cabinetry. There's numerous different stuff that will affect the price. But for a starting point, that's 135 and up. It just really depends on the house, how cut up it is. People nowadays, they want cut-up roofs. When you start getting into these higher-end custom homes, and they want metal roofs. So, that 135, that's going to be your shingle roof. When I would say my standard house. Now you start getting upgrades, your metal, your 20-foot ceilings, or your rock on the inside. High dollar fixtures. I mean, it just.
All right, Jeff, I have a question for you. What are some of the biggest hurdles that customers face when financing their dream home?
Well, I think, like we kind of touched on before, one of the hurdles is getting a real number, right? Once you have a realistic number for all the costs involved, I think the biggest hurdle, is, it differs so much per person. Every deal, is unique, obviously, to the individual's situation. But it's so random that you don't know, right? Sometimes it's the appraisal, sometimes it's the land, it's the surveys. That's really a tough one to answer, honestly, because I don't think we see one particular hurdle very often. Honestly, overages might be one of the deals we deal with the most. That's hard, as people changing, or honestly, what I think the biggest problem we see are people using builders or realtors or lenders that aren't experienced in rural properties. So we'll have builders come out from the big city who build fantastic homes in town, or have an agent from an inner city that doesn't have experience with the land, and easements and future value, and is your soil right? If they don't know that kind of stuff, that's generally what we see the problem with, because a lot of times it doesn't end well, and they have to try to switch builders, and switching builders is not something you want to do, right? That's not an enjoyable process for the loan, or I think for anything. So that's probably our biggest hurdle. Our biggest issue is dealing with people who aren't familiar with rural properties.
I have to second that, if you don't mind, Konni, because you touched on the easements and just dealing with utilities. I'll see sometimes if I'm listing a house and somebody comes in and they want to, maybe they're from the inner city and they've never done another agent that hasn't done rural property. I don't think that they're really familiar, or I'm pretty sure they're not familiar with, let's say that's a rural water company, and it's such a big hookup fee because it is a co-op rural water versus just, let me go to City Hall, get my water. Same thing with the septic. They don't understand the process, and then taking utilities up, or now they have to lay a gravel road for the builders to get into because it's sandy and no one can proceed to build until that. So there's so many functions of that add on to building on rural property that I think is incredibly important, that has to be addressed. And I know if the agent can maybe address that before it even gets to the builder or the lender, I think it could help. It could help the whole process too, of not having sticker shock or unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, and I think, the more I think about that, after that, I listen to Karen, I think the biggest challenge is the borrower's lack of knowledge about rural properties, right? If you're coming from, I know when I moved out here, and I'm pretty familiar with country properties, but there's a lot of stuff you don't think about. There's a lot of things that are different buying a house in the country versus buying a house in the city, and they're not hard to overcome or to learn about, but you don't know until you talk to someone who knows, and that's the only way to find out. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle, is just not knowing what you need to do to buy or build, and that's why experienced people with these properties, this type of property, is so important. It's that's the only way you're going to find that knowledge. Or you can find it out by trying and failing, but that's not really a good option.
Very costly.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars involved.
Exactly. So just to kind of reiterate that, is we're not trying to toot our own horns here, but there is a difference when you are financing properties or building or buying properties on acreage in the country than it is when you're in the city. It's just a whole different product. So what we see a lot of times on the lending side is people come in, they're like, so I want a 2.5% interest rate and I'm buying 50 acres and a house. That's not necessarily the same product, and you can't compare that financial product to maybe your friend that's buying a house in, the suburbs or an inner city, because you have to think there's a little bit more risk to the bank involved, because not everybody wants 50 acres in a house. We're probably going to end up sitting on it a little bit longer if, God forbid, something happened to you. And so that's kind of the expectation that we want to set up front as well, is that you can't compare an experience in town to an experience in the country. You know, it's just not, it's not comparing apples to apples. So I have a question, and this will kind of be for both of our builders, and then I'm going to let Jeff kind of speak to it from a lending side. But what either one of you want to go first, but as unfortunate as it is, customers fire builders, right? Are you willing to step into another builder's project, and what are some problems that arise when that happens?
Well, Konni, unfortunately, this happens. I think the sole reason for communication and not knowing what's requested or expected from the beginning. Open communication, I think, can eliminate a lot of the built-up frustrations that are caused by both the clients and the builders. So it's kind of a two-way road here. For me, I always do what's right. I think building anything has its challenges, has the challenges that come with it. And building a house is probably one of the last things that we as humans do on this earth that's truly man-made without the assistance of computer-aided technology. Every single item, trade, task in a project is installed or crafted with the man or woman's hands and skills. However, we can aim and strive for perfection and do our absolute best with the resources we have available. Things happen as well that may lead to other customers firing builders. Things don't always go as planned. The builder needs the opportunity to make this right before it leads to the objection or rejection of just firing a builder. Most of the time, Cody mentioned earlier in the program where things happen. They are custom homes. They are man-made products, and it may not be exactly what you thought you were getting out of it from the beginning. And I think the builder needs to have the opportunity to make it right before, everything blows up. There's also many factors. So to answer the question, would I be willing to step into another builder's product? I think there's many factors to consider before stepping in another builder's product after a customer's fired them. The process would have to be, for me, it'd have to be a case-by-case basis. I've never been on either side of this, so I think some of the factors would include bankruptcy, lawsuits, and liabilities. And how far along in the project are we? What's the stance on the lending side of it? And or is it a cash buyer? I think there's a lot of factors that go into it if I'm willing to take over the liability and the responsibility of that project. So I guess I really can't say either yes or no without truly evaluating the situation of the individual case-by-case basis. You want to add on to that, Cody? Or?
Yeah, Matt. I mean, I'm with you 100% with the case-by-case basis. I mean, as a builder, we both know, the 210 warranty. You have another builder that starts something, you don't know how his guys work. From foundation to framing to just all the meats and potatoes of the whole operation. You come in, say after drywall, we don't really know what's behind the walls. So we go in, we'll take it over. Well, then, we finish it out. Customers are happy. Everybody's good. Well, in 2 years, this foundation just splits in half, Obviously, it's going to come back on us as builders. So I would have to get with, obviously, my insurance company, the lenders, to make sure everybody's on the same page before. I mean, I'm sure that would do the same before we jump off into something that's going to hurt us long term. Because at the end of the day, we want to put out a product to where there's nothing to worry about, and the customer's going to be 100% happy.
Correct.
All right, Jeff, do you want to kind of talk about some issues if a customer had a bad builder experience and this happened from the lending side? What are some hoops that we're going to have to jump through?
I would start by saying definitely do your due diligence and talk to your builders and make sure your builder's familiar with the type of project you're doing. the area you're in, and before you sign up, because it's not easy to switch. It's if you have a loan on this property, if you own cash, you have some, you can do whatever you want to. But if you have a loan on this property, it's going to be very expensive to switch builders. It's not something you can switch for those reasons, right? I mean, we look at a builder before we lend on it, and that loan is based on that approval, right? And that is important. And to switch midway, you kind of start over, and it could happen. Like, we could do it, but it's not something you want to do. I mean, you're basically starting over with title. The title work too, it can be an issue. It's hard to get title insurance on a half-built house. So it could be a nightmare. We've seen it happen a couple times, but we do everything we can to help solve the issue if there's one, or whatever we have to do, because it is not something that I would ever recommend someone trying to go through. So it varies on the reason, obviously. If it is some sort of financial reason where the builder is no longer available, then that might be a different deal. It's still not going to be easy, but it was something I would avoid at all costs. If we just have to all get together and find out what the problem is and try to fix it. Because like I said, it's generally, when we've seen it, it hasn't been really even a quality issue. It's been more of a personal issue, and those things can be overcome, I think. So.
And I mean, there's delays too that happens with that. We can't just say, oh, hey, we'll reapprove you with this. Like, there are 30, 60, 90 days delays in these things.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and remember, you only have, usually in our world, you have about a year to build, and that still falls within your year. So those are just things to take into account. Well, I think we're reaching kind of the end of our webinar. So I want to open up the floor. Does anybody have any other additional questions, comments, things that you think we maybe missed that people need to know when looking to buy and build in the country?
I think I think we've all touched on this, but I just want to reiterate it. I think as soon as an individual or a couple decides that they're ready to buy land and they're ready to build, I think it's important to talk to all parties and start consulting with your broker, your real estate agent, your builder, and the lender, and kind of have everybody on the same page and what your plans are moving forward. And I think it would really streamline the process for people that have the uncertainty of what's next. We're going to go to the country, we're going to buy a piece of land, and we're going to go from there. Everything is really streamlined if they have all the team players involved and have realistic budgets, and we're here to help you as a team. And I think that's probably what to wrap up this webinar.
I agree.
I'll touch on that. With everybody working together, that will streamline the process so much faster compared to, talking to the realtor separate, not talking to the mortgage company, not talking to the banker. If everybody's on the same sheet of music, it's going to streamline everything. There's a lot of customers out there, they don't trust builders with giving them budget numbers. They just don't. They think, well, if I tell him it's going to be my budget's $500,000, well, he's going to tell me the bid for my house is $499,999. Well, after you interview the builder, you do your own research, you start calling around, you can tell what kind of builder that they are. And as a builder, and I'm sure Matt will hit on this, the fastest way to streamline a process of someone that wants to build right away is going to be, what's your budget? What can you afford? Let's get with the real estate people. Let's get with the mortgage people. Someone coming at me wanting to build a 3,000 square foot house for $300,000, and they've been hiding it from me for 2 months. Well, now we're delayed. We just wasted a bunch of time because I could have told you that wasn't going to work from the get-go. Biggest thing, everybody be on the same page, communicate, be open, be honest, and do your research when you're looking for builders all around.
I'll add on the budget. That's almost one of the first questions I ask the client is, what is your budget? And I describe to them, I'm an open book. I show them all the numbers. They know they see all the numbers. So I tell the clients from the beginning, the budget is probably the most important thing that we start out with, so we can build. Does that budget include your land? Does that budget include all the utilities? And from there, then we go to the lenders and say, can we do this before we invest a bunch of money and start drawing plans and buying land? Maybe we can't afford 100 acres and it's 50, and to keep in the budget, and then that helps us turn loose with the brokers and the real estate agent, and so everybody kind of knows from the beginning. I think the budget is a very, very important factor of the entire process.
I agree. I feel the same way, and because how can I, as the broker, help them put in a contract on a house if they haven't spoken to the builder and the lender? It's just impossible. So for me, it is. I almost will not. There's just no possible way. So I think and I've worked with Cody with many buyers, and it has to be a team with all three folks in the wheel to make it work. So I think that's the huge takeaway, is just do your homework on numbers for the big project, do your homework on the land as a broker to make sure it facilitates correctly for the builder to be able to work his project and put the dream together. And then, of course, the lender the whole way, because there's so many elements that you're the one supplying the money. They need to talk to you quite a bit along the way. So I think it's just a team effort all the way through.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I think one of the big things about buying in the country, this is people's dreams, right? People dream about moving to the country. I mean, it's a fantastic thing if that's what you want, right? And it can be really exciting, but just keep that in mind, and don't let your excitement get, ahead of yourself, and make sure you talk to someone who knows. If you get a hold of an experienced builder, realtor, or mortgage or lender in that in the rural area you're looking, they're going to be able to steer you at least to some other people who know what they're doing. I mean, it's I can't stress that enough, that I've been in the business a long time, and don't come to me to build in downtown San Antonio, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to lend on that. But rural properties are what we do, and I think it's really important to work with people who know exactly what you're doing. I mean, someone else might be able to get it done, but it may not be the experience you want in getting it done, because it's there's a lot involved in these transactions in any type of property. So it's definitely important to deal with people who specialize.
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of want to reiterate that is cheapest is not always best. Whether that is talking from a real estate agent who's saying, "Oh, I'm only going to charge you 1%," right? There may be a reason that they're whacking that down, right? Or a builder is like, "Hey, I'll do it for $125 a square foot instead of $135." He's cutting costs somewhere, right? Or a lender that says, "Hey, I may be the cheapest rate." Well, your origination fee may be ungodly high. Maybe they don't have the automation and the systems that maybe someone like a TFC is going to have, that's just going to streamline and make that process easier. Cheapest isn't always better, so do your research and know that most of the time, if you're building in the country, right, it's maybe your forever home, you don't want to cut corners. And again, just going back to the budget, I always kind of laugh, like, don't have a champagne budget and realize that a champagne taste and realize that you have a slap the bag kind of budget, right? Like, you need to make sure that what you're doing is going to fit with what you can afford. And it's okay if you can't afford a $7 million mansion. I know I can't, but I'm going to surround myself with a team that we can make sure gets me the most bang for my buck, right? Is getting me that quality that I'm willing to pay for. Well, guys, like, what a way to end this. Thank y'all so much for taking this opportunity. I think there was some great content here. I'm so excited about being able to release this to everybody. So thank y'all again. And everybody, what we will do is we will leave our contact information at the end of this video. Please make sure to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. We would love the opportunity to answer those and potentially earn your business. Thank y'all for tuning in.